no, I see Peter dancing in his office.
No, I was playing the drums. I was playing the air drums.
Oh, the air drums. Oh, yes.
I was playing the air drums, which is I was just trying to keep the beat with the thing, you know.
Oh, yes.
Hey, I was watching some classic drummers the other day. People like Phil Collins, you know, and some absolute brilliant drummers, you know. So I was remembering being a drummer one time myself. So welcome to Spin Legal today. It is July 28th, 2026. This is episode 128, and we are talking about who is exempt from parts of the Employment Standards Act and why. So just to give you our short intro first, if you need to contact Invictus Legal, you can do so at 905-688-5598. Email Angela with angela@weareinvictus.legal, or myself using Peter at weareinvictus.legal. The website is weareinvictus.legal. There you go. Okay, so this is so who is exempt from employment standards and why? Okay,
Peter, you're exempt.
I'm exempt. No,
yeah, because remember you accused me of making you a slave. Hey,
go on.
That you're a slave.
Well, I didn't sign my contract that said I'm a slave. I signed a contract that said I'm a partner.
Oh, yes. Well, that's the same thing. You and I are both slaves.
Okay, so the Employment Standards Act in Ontario is a pretty important piece of legislation, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's created in year 2000. Who was the premier back then?
2000, that would be Mike Harris.
Oh, Harris. Okay.
Yeah.
And basically it says, this doesn't apply to certain categories of workers. We were talking about certain elements of the Employment Standards Act last week, and this is how that act does not apply to certain categories of workers.
Yeah. And this is why when people tell me that they want to practice employment law, take some courses in employment law. Work with someone who's already doing it before you say, I offer services in employment law.
Yeah.
You know, because it's a very complicated area. It's even more than the Employment Standards Act. And the Employment Standards Act itself is very broad.
Well, yeah, absolutely, because these whole sections of this that are that are exemptions, that's a pretty important part of any statute, isn't it? So the rule applies to everybody, but unless your name begins with Jones.
Begins with what?
Unless your name is Jones. The act applies to everybody unless your name is Jones. That's the kind of rule we don't really like, do we?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So one of the key factors here is this OREG 28501, which is special rules for the establishment of minimum wages.
Yep. There are everybody. If you're employing somebody, they must be making minimum wage, at least, except if you fall under this category.
Yeah. So this is basically the important point here is that workers are exempt from certain workers are exempt from parts 7 to 11 of the Act.
Yeah.
Right. Which covers all of those key factors. And this includes a number of categories, which includes what we would broadly term the professions: practitioners of architecture, lawyers, engineering, public accounting, surveying, veterinary science. It includes regulated health professional organizations like chiropody, chiropractic, dentist, massage therapy, medicine, optometry, pharmacy, physiotherapy, psychology. I presume even psychotherapists are excluded as well.
Yep, psychotherapists. Like you have a regulatory college, a profession, like paralegals and lawyers do. Okay?
Yep.
Or if you're in health professions and you have a college that regulates your work, it's likely that you would be included in these exemptions. Not all the time, mind you. Like if you're working, say, in a hospital or someplace where they're giving you a 9 to 5 and it's a specific employment contract, that's a very different type of thing. But a lot of times, if you're going to be working in a physiotherapy firm where you're in a clinic, there's some differences. Same as law firms, same as doctors if you're working at a medical clinic, accounting firms,
Yeah.
you know. So those types of things where you're in a practice for the profession. Okay? But if
Okay.
you're in something where
Well,
there's all
let's
kinds of employees, that's a different thing.
let's put this entire chart up for everybody to see. So basically, the options is basically if you. That's not the one that's
Here.
not the one I'm looking for. Remove. There, definitely remove that. I'm going to have
I
to
think that
find.
came the last time when we were talking about amps.
Yep, I think
Yeah.
that was the wrong one. I'm going to have to find and add the right image. Somehow it
Just be
got
careful you put the correct
excluded.
image up, Peter.
Yeah. Well, where the hell did it save it to? Okay, there you go. Okay, now we can do this. Now let's put this up there. Okay,
So
there we
these
go.
are different people who are in a separate professional framework. Okay, these are people who are generally working in a place like your realtor is not employed by the real estate broker. They're not employees.
Yeah.
They're a realtor. They're
Yeah.
licensed and they get into
Well,
an agreement with the broker, and the broker gets a percentage of their sales.
and if you think about this, that as a realtor, in a bad market, you can't expect to get oodles of cash from the one house you sell in the year, right? There's risk involved in a in an up market and a down market. There's very much risk involved in any of these kind of things, like real estate sales particularly is one of those. The interesting one here was duly registered practitioners under the Drugless Practitioners Act. In other words, what we're talking about here is people who are who don't believe in drugs and traditional medicine, herbalists.
Acupuncturists,
Yeah.
osteopaths, people like that who are also professionals, but they are also drugless practitioners. Nutritionists sometimes.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
there's
they
people
can,
who
yeah,
are, but it's a very specific. You have to be within that particular regulatory framework.
yeah. There's a separate professional framework for each of them. And for example, one of the things about, as we were talking about with, what was it, Drugless Practitioners Act, that sort of thing. If people are kind of, well, I'm not going to go and see my homeopathic doctor, because my insurance won't cover it.
Mm-hmm.
Then you're probably, if you're a homeopathic doctor, you may actually lose out. You could make a loss.
Yeah, it's the same as lawyers who take legal aid. Okay,
Yeah.
legal aid will only cover certain people and for certain cases.
Yeah.
Okay, so you may not be able to take all the cases that come through your door, even though as you get more experience, some lawyers ditch legal aid altogether and are able to make good money using the cases they do get.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the irony, of course, is that
All of these are
legal aid.
separate frameworks.
Yeah, yeah, legal aid isn't permissible for paralegals, ironically as
But
well,
we
isn't it?
haven't got it yet. We're working on it.
Yeah.
I'm on an advisory group that's going to be
Yeah.
looking into legal aid and
Okay.
how
So
paralegals can fit in.
yeah, and again, with things like practitioners, a lot of this is about there being separate professional regulations, as there is with the Law Society. Those regulations kick in that supersede the Employment Act.
Yeah, you got the health professions, which I believe there are 32 professions which have colleges. There's the legal profession under the Law Society, which covers two professions, lawyers and paralegals. Then there's also the drugless practitioners, where the acupuncturists, the Chinese medicine therapists, the Teaching Profession Act for teachers, social workers and social work college. There's a whole bunch of people who are under regulated bodies that they dictate how people must function. And so the thing is, it doesn't mean that if I bring in a paralegal to work with me, that I can pay them $5 an hour if I feel like it. It doesn't mean.
Why not? I think we should whip them. No,
yes.
I'm joking, of course.
Well, I'll be whipping you first.
Of course, but that isn't going to happen either, right?
I know. It wouldn't happen.
But yeah, and one of the ones that I find most interesting here, because they're not a profession or anything, they're just a normal, actually blue-collar worker, is the person employed in commercial fishing. And I mean fishing with a fishing net and fishing reel, guys.
Yeah, like fishing with an F.
Yeah, fishing with an F, not P-H-I-S, P-H, fishing.
Yeah, because there are fishermen with a PH. Just bring your laptop.
Yeah. So, and again, I guess it relates to the fact that you put out to sea, you put out to sea or lake fishing or whatever. You could work 50, 60 hours and catch nothing.
Yeah.
Right. It's a fact of life for fishermen. I'm surprised farmers aren't on this list as well.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there's also commission salespeople.
Yeah, I know. That was the next category. And again, if you think about it, as commission salespeople, there are some salespeople that are not paid any form of salary. They're 100% commission.
Yeah. And they're usually something that's based on something that they should be able to sell at least and get at least minimum wage out of their sales on average.
Yeah. And in fact, actually,
you're out there to you're selling like for different products or services, and you go out and for every sale you make, you get a certain percentage.
Yeah. And there is actually some exceptions to that, because, for example, if you've got a car and you're going long distance, you've got a sales territory to maintain, you are probably paid expenses.
Yeah.
And
then there's also others where there's piecework involved, where if you're just, like the old stuffing envelope regime where they advertise and you can pay them $200 so that you can get a job stuffing envelopes and make tons of money. And then they send you all the material where you send that out to other people and charge them $200 so that you can also make money stuffing envelopes.
Okay, so there are certain workers that are exempt from hours of work and eating periods. And for example, firefighters is not surprisingly on that list, the top of that list. For example, hey, a firefighter's fighting a blaze downtown for 15 hours. They are there for 15 hours. You eat you eat when you can. You drink when you can. You look after your body when you can. But you're there for 15 hours, and there's even if a relief crew comes along, potentially that relief crew is not acting in relief, but is just adding on to the pre-existing crew. Especially
forest fires nowadays, how much they're in demand.
Well, that's a whole separate ball game entirely, right? Some of the
got to look at me, because your face keeps disappearing off the screen.
Well, one of the categories that you've got to consider also here is that, for example, supervisory or managerial employees who are only who occasionally do non-managerial work.
Yeah. Yeah, and they don't get overtime.
Yeah.
Okay. And unless you put it into a contract, like these are minimums. Okay. One of the things that I'm having a big argument with another case that I'm working on right now is that they were telling, oh, these types of people don't get minimum wage, they don't get overtime, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. I mean, if you left it without a contract, but the contract the person received enriches it. They refer to it both in the handbook and also refer the handbook in the contract.
Yeah.
So this would be almost composing part of the contract.
Well, there was one case that I was speaking to a gentleman about a long time ago, where basically he was on a pretty good salary. He was on about $100,000 salary, but when he did all of the other non-supervisory type work that he was involved with, it turned out, he said to me, I get $12 an hour.
Yep.
Right.
He works 100 hours a week.
Exactly. And that was part of the problem. He's got good money. He's not wanting for money, but ultimately spending his entire time at work. Now, ironically, he might be a candidate for the what we were talking about last week. What was that? Separate,
Yeah, the separation.
Disconnecting from work.
Disconnection, right to disconnect. Yeah.
Right. In the modern, when he was working a lot of hours. He was up before dawn. He was dealing with, they paid him a lot of money to create like events. He went out very, very early in the morning, often 3, 4 in the morning, to go to the event on the day of the event start, just to put the final prep in order. And if he didn't do it, there was nobody else doing it.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of types of jobs like that, that are very difficult, or they may be working like crazy for a few weeks, and then all of a sudden they're not doing anything for another 2 weeks.
He was paid, so on a contract, he might get hundreds of thousands of dollars for running that event. And because he's moving chairs here and doing this and doing that and doing the other, he's nickel and dimed out of the money.
Yeah, and they have to be really careful about that too. And I think if you're a worker, it's always best to try to negotiate your contracts. So sometimes you're on that and you should be negotiating your contracts. Like, for example, people on a construction crew, there was a thing where people can waive the right to have overtime and then have it averaged over, so that some weeks they can work up to 60 hours a week without paid overtime.
Well,
which I thought was that came under Mike Harris's period of time.
The other point about this one, and before some workers are exempt from overtime pay, so they don't get paid anything for the overtime that they do.
Yeah, accountants. Can you imagine what they do in their incomes?
Yeah, management, for example.
Yeah, managers, anytime doing things.
Yeah. And the other thing is that it's important to note that some workers are exempt from minimum wage. So minimum wage could be they could be paid $5 an hour for some of the work they do.
Yeah. And this is why it's important that if you fall under one of those categories and they bring you in on a contractual basis, that they're not offering you like a full salary position. Like, I can hire a lawyer here and then we can pay them a full salary, and it'll be just like anything else. But we put them on a contract that would give them that salary and how many hours a week, so we can give them a work-life balance. Okay? Same as a paralegal, we can do that. Or a paralegal can go on a contract, and then that person can choose their time and not have to work excessively if they don't want to. Yeah. So there's a lot of different ways you could kind of work through this sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And people can still make a good amount of money either way.
Yeah. And part of the parcel of the logic here is that a worker, particularly an intelligent worker, a worker who's spent a lot of time and effort in developing their professionalism, professional skills, etc., can decide whether they wish to be employed or self-employed.
Yep, exactly. And very often they are. And sometimes they don't feel comfortable just being own account self-employed, but they feel more comfortable working with others and say, okay, I'm going to work part-time at this law firm and I'm going to take on as much or as little as I can, but I'll work with them. And then on the side, I really enjoy theater and movies, so I'll help them. I'll work and do that work.
Yeah.
Okay? And then you could do a variety of things, and then you have a complete variety of income, and you have income streams that are separate, and you have other ways of making money, so you're not wholly dependent on one person. Nowadays, this is becoming a big thing, which is something I was reading about in an American journal through the American Bar Association. They're talking about the rise of the gig lawyer, which is sort of like they're becoming Uber lawyer.
Well,
weird.
I can see that kind of thing happening with the aid of tech in some, in a few years' time.
But TaskRabbit, they have these things people go, but then at the same time, you have to be really careful because the legal profession is very highly regulated.
Okay. Some workers are exempt from overtime pay as well. And believe it or not, funnily enough, the first one on that list is firefighters.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. And also that includes supervisory or managerial employees. There is fishing and hunting guides, landscape gardeners, horticultural workers, students instructing or supervising children, students at a camp for children, students in charitable recreational programs, and a few other things, ambulance drivers, helpers, and first aid attendants on an ambulance. And IT professionals.
And the reason we do that is because ambulances, there's an unpredictable amount of work that's going to happen. Okay.
Yeah.
The ambulance could be called 50 times this week, and it could be called 2 times the following week.
Yeah. You could go to the best place where all the accidents occur, and crank the music up, stick your feet on the dashboard, and look like a zombie for 40 hours, week 1, and not even find that location week 2, right?
Yeah, then all hell breaks loose the following week.
Yep. Oh yeah, exactly. So you can't, a lot of these actually are very difficult. For example, there are special overtime rules, for example, for road builders, sewer and water main construction, local cartage, highway transport, hotels, motels, tourist resorts, and restaurants and taverns, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So,
if you're not on the overtime list, if you're not on the overtime exempt list, but you're still working and they put you on a salary, don't kid yourself, you're still entitled to overtime. There's a lot of things that you just have to, that's why I say the Employment Standards Act is a very funny type of legislation. You have to know the whole law, not just what's in the ESA, but what's in common law, what's in WSIB, what's in occupational health and safety, what's in the Human Rights Code, a whole bunch of things that we have to look at to make sure that a specific situation is addressed. And the law tries to address specific situations, and that's why things are always evolving, because situations also evolve, and societal attitude also evolves.
Yeah. Well, some of the aspects here, workers exempt from minimum wage includes students in charitable recreational programs, students employed to instruct and supervise children, students employed at a camp, superintendents, janitors, and caretakers of residential buildings who reside in the building. So that's that list probably all make a certain amount of sense.
Mhm.
So again, another one, there's some rules about these, and you'll kind of go, well, of course, workers exempt from public holiday rules. I'm gonna buck the list here. I'm not gonna start with the F word. I'm gonna start with power workers. How about that?
Mhm.
Right. Then we'll go to firefighters, fishermen, landscape gardeners, horticultural
Tourism
workers.
workers.
Sorry,
Tourism workers.
tourism workers.
Hospitality
Yeah,
workers.
yeah. Right.
Because a lot of
Tax
them are working on public holidays.
and another category there is taxi cab drivers. But then again, most taxi cab drivers set their own schedule.
Yep, exactly. And they could work on these days.
Yeah. So they could take Canada Day off if they wished, you know. That's up to them. They might lose a bucket load of money, but they could take it off.
Yep.
Right. Other ones, as you said, seasonal employees in hotels, motels, tourist resorts, restaurants, taverns, who are provided room and board, so they're exempt.
Yep. And there's a lot of them who are, depending on where it is and what type of thing. Like if you're running a ski resort or something like that and you have people there, they might live on site.
Yeah.
And there's ways that is also treated too.
Okay, so there are a few things here, which is that many licensed professionals are governed by separate statutes and professional bodies. For example, we've talked about doctors, nurses, we've talked about lawyers and paralegals. Those two types of organizations are governed externally of the Employment Standards Act.
Hmm.
Right? Sector-specific work patterns may come into play. Things like construction, trucking, road building, farming, hospitality, and other seasonal industries. And there is also some questions about emergency and public safety work, because firefighters, ambulance staff, similar jobs often require availability beyond normal work hours. In other words, you can't refuse a bank holiday.
Yep. Yep. There's a lot of different jobs like that. Like if
You may get
you're a paramedic, you have to
yeah,
be kind of available most of the
every
time,
day.
all the time,
Yeah, and
And
you
most of
may get
the time, like I was talking to my son, he's a nurse in the hospital. Most of the time, it's 12-hour shifts, 4 days on, 4 days off.
yep.
Sometimes you'll work an extra fifth day or sixth day. And really, people like this can go crazy working all the overtime.
Generally speaking, I like the 4 day on, 4 day
Yeah,
off type
but
of.
they do get paid
Um,
for overtime. And
yeah,
this is one of the things, too, because the unions negotiate the pay time,
yeah,
overtime.
yeah. Okay, so this is a very interesting kind of category that we've got here. Because you think that employment standards would be there to ensure that everybody's getting a fair rate of pay, and not that they are going, not that they're going to get stiffed for their pay packet next week.
Yeah. Exactly. Like this is one of the things that they're trying to see what makes common sense. And because
Well,
of the regulatory bodies, like we're not going to bring in a doctor, for example, hey, and we're going to pay him $5 an hour,
yeah,
hey,
yeah,
doctors, largely are self-employed, or if they're working in a hospital setting, they have like their attendances, like their
yeah,
attending physician, and they have a
yeah.
certain amount of money that they get from being a hospitalist, as well as any money they make from being a doctor outside. So there's a lot of different things that they arrange, and a lot of these people arrange things through contracts. Okay, so this is like where, as a professional, you work things on contract. Physiotherapists make so much on an average basis per hour, so they go to a clinic and they say, okay, I want to deliver services for physiotherapy here. and I want to charge patients this much money. The clinic will arrange it. They'll make sure you get paid, and the clinic takes some.
Yeah.
So this is
Well,
a
in
way
fact,
that a lot of them do it.
yeah, in fact, actually, many medical practices are actually multifunctional, aren't they? That
Yep.
they have psychologists, they have physiotherapists, they have a whole range of professions within their complex.
Yep, exactly. They might have like the multidisciplinary. This is what Invictus is looking at doing in the future, to have perhaps a lawyer, one a private investigator, three, four other types of professions that are interrelated. We will
Yeah.
be working with them.
Yeah.
And people could come in and deal with that. So we're working on developing that model. That's a business plan in itself about how that works, because it's easy to have all lawyers and then just lawyer helpers or staff, or paralegals and paralegal helper staff, but it's gets more complicated when you do a multidisciplinary approach.
Yeah. One thing I note from my notes here, that generally speaking, the courts interpret these rules quite narrowly.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, how does that function?
Yeah.
So
The only
what?
thing is sometimes I'll have to go back to the contract, the context of the contract, and also the reality of how the work is actually being played out.
Mhm.
I think sometimes what happens is some people misinterpret it. If I was running a janitorial business and I had contract janitors, right, there's certain things I can't do with these people.
Mhm.
Right? They can do things and they can go to another janitorial company as well as work with me and do things. Hey, it's not like they're in any kind of
But
situation where they
yeah,
could create conflicts.
but they have to show up at the Performing Arts Center at 5 o'clock to do their 3-hour shift.
Yeah, exactly. And then they come back and then they do another one in an office that is closed so they can clean the
Yeah.
office.
Yeah.
And then the next day they'll start working on, say, a school, right? So I mean, there's a lot of different things that when you're working on that, it's a very, very different type of situation. And yes, you have to pay these people decently. So if these people come and I'm a janitor for you, and I give you the charge, or you discuss the charge and you negotiate it, and then we just say, okay, I'm going to come every. So on
Yeah.
average, a janitor, if you're coming to have somebody do cleaning, so it's average about $50 to $75 an hour,
Yeah.
right, to do cleaning as an independent janitor, not necessarily someone you hire on staff. Like they're not custodial staff at
Yeah.
a
But
school.
for example, there are, of course, you talking just now about contract janitors, but of course, organizations such as, let's say, your average local municipality employs cleaners as well, doesn't it?
Yep,
And
exactly.
janitorial staff
Yep,
on a
office
normal employment
do.
contract.
Yep, office buildings do. Like a lot of times, what they did is the company would used to employ these people full time, but they don't anymore. Okay,
Yeah.
so companies, people either do it on their own and they offer their services to them, or they form a company, and then they and their company offer the services to them. Okay, so it's like that. So as long as they're kind of in their own right. But professionals there's some rules around professions, what they can do and what they can't do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you can't just go in as and go do services about 5 different places because you're a lawyer, and you can't just do work at 5 different places as a lawyer
Yeah. Well, we
without
can talk about
conflicts and everything else bouncing back to you.
yeah, we can talk about the details of that on another session if you
Oh
wish.
yeah, yeah.
Right? Because we certainly don't have time to get into it here.
Oh, that's complicated. We have to go through
Yeah.
case law and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's also many aspects about like accounting employees.
Accountants too have
Yeah.
some rules too about who they can work for
Yeah.
and how many. Okay,
Yep.
and what they need to do. What's an independent accountant? What's an accountant that working in a firm? Okay, like I've learned that too from another accountant that I work with,
Yep.
and also a guy who runs his own accounting firm who's doing some forensic accounting work for us.
Yeah.
So this
Okay.
is the kind of important things that we have to, like when we try to make some distinguishing between what people are doing, okay, and what
Yep.
to do, what you're asking them to do, okay.
Yeah. And we will cover certain other employment related topics in the upcoming weeks, because I think that's an important developing area in terms of law. There's a lot of
I
employment
also
related.
think what we need to talk about too is the rising costs for employers.
Yeah.
Okay, the rising risks for employers. Because I was reading about it. Somebody was a court case or something, and we were talking about it. And there's a number of small business owners who were on the list,
Yeah.
the discussion group. And a lot of them say, well, that's why I no longer have employees. I do all the work myself and my family. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And others just give up doing work that requires employees and just go out and does something on their own. And this is
Okay.
something where that I think as policymakers, you got to be very, very careful about pushing employers out of business, trying to push employers so that they're bearing the burden of a lot of things. This is why I have an issue with employers being required to provide health benefits, dental benefits, insurance benefits, pensions. I think these things should be provided at large to anybody. So if I'm
Yeah.
self-employed, I can pay into the system and I can get all that stuff.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay, so one of the things that we're going to be hopping out for a different area of law next week. So we're going to be talking about next week. We're going to be talking about a law practice that actually answers calls, as opposed to using robocalls.
Robocalls. Doesn't that come from a particular election that happened a while back? And he sent
I,
them to a place called Pierre Poutine.
I think that yes, our honourable leader of the opposition seemed to use a lot of robocalls over the last few years, hasn't he?
Yeah, and then there was only one guy arrested, some Mike guy who nobody ever heard of, but he got arrested.
All right. Okay. So if you need legal help, you can contact Invictus Legal on 905-688-5598. Email Angela with angela@weareinvictus.legal, or myself using Peter at weareinvictus.legal. And we are invictus.legal is our website. And of course, one of the key factors about any show like this is,
Well, this is not legal advice. We're just telling you different things or reviewing things. Sometimes you'll review regulations to tell
yep,
you what it says, and we're not going to say, hey, this is a great regulation, or maybe it's not so great. But I think people should know about these things,
yep,
and people need to be aware of what our politicians are talking about and what they're passing through the House. So there's a
yep.
lot of very interesting stuff going on, and to be in touch or be engaged. So if you're a business person, be aware of these things because they affect you,
Well,
okay? And how to protect yourself.
yeah. And it's not just people in business, it's people in all
Or
walks
even if
of
you're
life.
just looking for a job and you want to make sure that the employer that's hiring you is treating you well, and
Yeah,
that's a fair agreement between you and the employer.
absolutely. All right. So, well, thank you everybody for being here. And Tuesday at 6 o'clock-ish is when we'll be back, and we'll see you next Tuesday.